Hello, welcome back from Top the Wall. My name is Mason Knopp, and I am once again at it again, doing more deck techs, of course. And this time in Pauper, we have a deck called Bant-chantress. My take on Enchantress after the whole Theros Beyond Death set came out. I have wanted to do something with Enchantress. Alright, so as you can see with Bant-chantress here, this deck is actually a kind of prison deck. It's called Bant-chantress after the Enchantress decks that exist, and Bant because of it's mainly, as you can see, in these three colors. So we are relying on a lot of our lockout pieces and lockdown pieces to lock down creatures or remove them, like Journey to Nowhere, Hobble, Faith's Fetters, and Temporal Isolation. These four different cards can end up removing a creature or prevent it from attacking, which is the big one, the more important one, or potentially, well, in Hobble's case, it doesn't prevent them from blocking. Now, each one of these has its different ups and downs. Faith's Fetters is a bigger one. Later in the game, it can end up preventing a creature with a particularly harmful ability from doing anything, and it gains us 4 life, catching us up even better. It pulls its own weight. It may seem a little fat and a little bit slower, which is why we're not running the full 4, but it does actually end up pulling its own weight, and we can get to that 4 mana much faster, as you'll see in a second. The Hobble is just a good 2-for-1. It's a good 2-for-1. Even if that creature isn't black and it's still able to block, that's fine. More times than not, it's going to be perfectly fine. Journey to Nowhere is just a good catch-all removal answer, and Temporal Isolation, I like this one much better than Pacifism. Normally, they would first think of running something like Pacifism down here. However, unlike Pacifism, this one doesn't specifically state that it can't attack or block, and this one has Flash. Now, this one, it ends up getting flashed in, and the enchanted creature has Shadow. Then you prevent all the damage that will be dealt by the enchanted creature. So Shadow essentially works similar to Flying, except it can't block the non-shadow creatures. So basically, has Shadow, it can't block or be blocked by creatures without Shadow, and you would prevent all the damage that it would deal. So it doesn't matter if it attacks. It doesn't really matter whether it blocks or not for us, because we don't have any Shadow creatures in this deck. We're completely fine with this. And because of its Flash, that means our Omens are better, which also have Flash. Now, the great thing about having a bunch of instants together, you can hold up much more of your mana much later, giving you the best, like the most knowledge that you can possibly get before making your choice, allowing your opponent to act first while still having the options available to you, and you can react accordingly. Flash is essentially just, instant speed, it says. And having a variety of flash or instant speed cards gives you this kind of ability to threaten, while at the same time, it might be nothing, but it might be something, and your opponent doesn't always know exactly what you're doing. Now, these 2 Omen cards are two of the upgrade cards from Theros Beyond Death. These are some of the things that we were missing in Enchantress to actually make it good. Now, Omen of the Sea, as you can see here, Flash enters the battlefield, you get to scry 2, and then you draw the card. So it replaces itself and increases our enchantment count, and later we can sacrifice it to scry 2. So we really get to dig with this, and it really does help us out. All the Omens have like the pay 3, sack it, scry 2. But Omen of Dead is 1 cheaper, and it just simply returns a creature card from a graveyard to our hand. So typically, swing in with Brine Giant, let it die, let it die off, whatever, doesn't matter. Get it back for 1 with the Omen of the Dead. Of course, we're not planning to mill ourselves out a whole bunch, so I only wanted to include it as a one-of kind of recursion card that would be better to have later, and we're not super pressured to have it immediately. So those are the 2 Omen cards from Theros Beyond Death. We also have 2 new kinds of creatures from Theros Beyond Death, actually more than that actually could go into this deck, but these 2 were the best creatures, the biggest upgrades for Enchantress, and the key cards in Bant-chantress. Brine Giant is similar to Gurmag Angler, except it has one more toughness, so it can technically eat a Gurmag Angler and keep going. It reduces its cost from 7 down to 1 blue mana by simply counting enchantments instead of exiling cards from a graveyard. So, with all of these kind of aura cards and enchantment cards, well, auras are enchantments, whatever, that replace themselves, we can actually increase our enchantments count, keep our hand size high, keep playing those, and then dig ourselves closer to this Brine Giant, getting all those 2-for-1s. Then put the Brine Giant onto the battlefield for 1, 2. Rarely do we pay more than 3 mana for this thing, and we still have mana left open just for us to play this. And we're not rushing typically to play out a Brine Giant. Typically, we're playing out on defense. If you've ever played an Enchantress deck before, you know that we're basically on the receiving end of all of the aggro decks. Aggro just loves to go at it and go at us and immediately overwhelm a lot of Enchantress decks. Enchantress used to be kind of bad, but I do enjoy it. I do enjoy playing it. I have a soft spot for enchantments. Now, Nexus Warden is one of the constellation creatures, which means whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield, its ability gets triggered. So whenever we play one of our 30 enchantment cards that are very cheap, we gain 2 life. So against an aggro matchup or a mid-range matchup, gaining that 2 life repeatedly is actually a very big deal. And not only that, it's only 3 mana for a 1/4 with reach. So we get to end up protecting ourselves with this very good blocker, gain ourselves a bunch of life, and we're actually in a very special spot for this Nexus Wardens. And just dipping real quick into the mana base here, you see here with our Utopia Sprawls and our Wild Growths, if we go turn 1 Forest and Wild Growth or Utopia Sprawl, and then untap, play another land, play Nexus Warden on turn 2, and then on turn 3 untap with another land and play card, we have access to suddenly 4 mana. And we can start playing out, let's say, 2 Journey to Nowheres, or Journey to Nowhere and a Temporal Isolation, or we can start dropping larger aura enchantments. So we can catch up much, much faster, and we almost immediately just stabilize against an aggro deck on turn 3. So a lot of times before some aggro decks have actually had the chance to, start actually hitting us, we've already stabilized against them. It actually says a lot about the power of the deck, the potential to stop aggro decks before they have the chance to hurt us with very little issue. And this actually does great against the burn matchup, which is, keep in mind, mono red burn is one of the tier 1 decks in Pauper right now. So this is actually a pretty good upgrade. It's in the magical, it has that magical toughness of 4, so it requires 2 lightning bolts to kill it. Or I guess I think they have one other 4 damage card. I don't remember what it is. Insert it here. And for the last non-land card for a minute in the main deck is Crufix's Insight. I wanted to put more, but I just wanted to try it out for the one. I felt it was a little big, little slow. Crufix's Insight, 2 and a green. Reveal the top 6 cards of your library. Put 3 enchantment cards from among them into your hand, and the rest of the real cards go into the graveyard. So it's a way for us to quickly get a 3-for-1 by just playing this for 3 mana, 3-for-1. It's pretty great, and sometimes we get the chance to see like 4 enchantments and just go, 4 enchantments and some lands. I think I'll take the 2-for-1. I think I'll take the other 2-for-1. And I wonder what else I'll take. Oh, maybe another 2-for-1. Oh, geez, that sounds pretty good. I think I would like 3 2-for-1s. That would be great. And on to the lands, just the last part of the main deck. Ash Barrens to get either the 1 island, 1 of the plains, 1 of the forests, get the 4 Blossoming Sands to help fix us, gain us a little bit of life. Sideboard is very interesting. Calming Verse. Now, it destroys all the enchantments that we don't control, so long as we don't have any untapped lands. Otherwise, it destroys all the enchantments. Always got to tap out for this, but it's worth it when you're fighting against boggles and you just one-sided wrath against all the boggles and make opponent cry. Curse of Oblivion for all the graveyards. Curse of Bloody Tome is the normal finisher in the Enchantress decks, but I felt that having it as an alternative win condition in the side, a lot of opponents might not actually expect it and might forget about it, or it might be better in some matchups more than others, because there are plenty of graveyard decks that would be more than happy to have us put Curse of Bloody Tome on them. And Curse of the Bloody Tome is a very slow win condition. It wins over the course of a few dozen turns. It's not very fast. It takes the whole game it takes a very long time for this thing to work. We are going to have a little bit of issue with our opponent and tokens, as we will probably find out when they go and just create a bunch of elves, or they create a bunch of tokens of some kind, like a bunch of goblins or something. Having those matchups against a bunch of 1/1s that come out really fast, we don't always have the time to play a bunch of these cards. We will get blown out by those. Those are still more than fast enough. Having multiple targets against our deck is an issue. So, need an electricity. Hydroblast for the burn matchup and other red aggro matchups. Pyroblast for blue decks and the control matchups. Ray of Revelations, more for boggles again. Always got to have something for boggles. Can't forget about them. Recumbent Bliss is just a good card against some of the aggro matchups and some of the mid-range matchups. It's another kind of prism effect that gains us life and helps us stabilize again if we really need it. Weather the Storm, more for burn. Now, I did say the sideboard was interesting. The reason why it's actually rather interesting is because we don't have a whole lot of artifact hate, and we don't need it. Primarily in Pauper, when you have artifact hate, it is specifically for just Affinity. Yes, I almost forgot the name of the tier 1 deck. It is an aggro deck. Affinity is a very fast, very powerful artifact deck that likes to play out lots of cheap creatures very fast, and big creatures like Mirror Enforcer, Frogmite, Gearseeker Serpent, and following up with Atog, which I don't think that we really need. Considering that they are not necessarily the fastest of aggro decks, a lot of times we can stabilize against them pretty well. They're not actually the biggest threat in the world to us, and we do have a relatively good matchup against them. I feel like maybe if we just, play something like, let's say, a Weather the Storm or two in our deck, if we really feel like they're a particularly fast version of Affinity. Otherwise, I don't feel that we even need that. I feel very, very safe against the Affinity matchup, and I don't feel like they could actually remove a Resolved Nexus of Wardens, which can block the majority of the creatures in a Affinity deck, save for like the larger ones, keep in mind, without dying. Plus, our creatures can keep up with theirs when we actually get them out, so we can actually stabilize against them. We're actually favored. For Tron, Tron's just the tier 1 top deck. It is the top of the format right now. And personally, I feel like something in Tron needs to be banned, or something needs to be done about Tron. I'm not even going to consider it part of the game, because it's just simply always been a tier 1 deck. The meta never swings away from it. It always just stays right up there. Unless there's something else truly broken going on, Tron is always number 1. So I don't want to consider a broken deck or something that I know is going to get fixed or banned at some point. Anyway, thank you for watching, coming in for that face touch, and remember, if you like this or you like what you saw, leave a comment down below and share with your friends. Coming in for that face touch.